Today, let's talk about the deficiency of electromagnetic radiation, photons.
How's that sunlight feeling?
Oh, it's wonderful.
Sunshine. It's what attracts most people to Florida. Researchers have long known sunlight can help lower blood pressure, but
Yes, sunlight does a lot of things, repairs and restores the body. Everything is photonic. And dealing with photonic medicine, the ability to cure, restore DNA with photons, we have to recognize that from the sun, basically this is where all the energy comes into the plants that take in carbon dioxide, give up oxygen, give off the different sugars. All that happens inside the body. In the master equation, where photon, light energy comes in and then out. And all of this works to help balance and make life possible. Everything is photonic. Now the plants will take in this photon from sunlight and be able to utilize it in a photosynthesis process to be able to take different molecules and give them higher energy to allow the formation of ATP, energy molecules. If the photon wavelength gets too high, then we have ionizing radiation that takes electrons out and creates an ion in the vast. And this is dangerous. But basically, scientists have mostly concentrated on the visible light with a touch of the UV to understand in biology. But now we know that there's also infrared. This is involved in biology as well. Now the visible light comes into the system, converting into the different energy molecules, making the carbohydrates in a process known as Calvin's cycle. And the biology is utilizing not just the visible, not just the ultraviolet, but the infrared, body heat. This is the amazing thing that allows the communication. This is a nutrient. Heat, light, these are nutrients for the body. The tree uses 200 calories per day. The human being, about 2,000 calories. So photosynthesis is not enough for the human being. The tree needed to make these things to give us the nutrients that we need for our activity. And we need to look at the infrared, how we need heat. We also need light, sunlight. All of these things very needed for our biology. In order for the cells to work, the cells have to communicate. And they use different types of infrared signals, visible light signals, to transmit information and to make energy possible. All of this energy swimming through the body. And we know about the infrared radiation. This is very important. And we know the limits. We know how cold it is to create a problem. And some people have been able to surpass that. But we have to recognize that this is where we get our energy. Now let's learn more about the energy of life and its photonic connection with sunlight and heat.
So I want to start with a little bit of a metaphor. You look at a street, the streets provide the highways, they connect the houses together, people can travel, you deliver goods. But there's also power lines along the edges of many streets. We don't see them, we aren't aware of them. But they're, of course, providing electricity to all the homes and the businesses.
So your body is a conglomerate of molecules that if you reverse engineer it, it is actually light. And so you give off photons, and you are in your body are moving massive amount of electrical currents, and that's how actually your organs function.
The body is truly energetic with lots of electricity flowing. But all of this is photonic in its direction and in its control, and at its base heart of origin.
Walls, they're providing structure, but they're the path, by the conduit by which the electricity reaches the plug and therefore your devices. There's something similar going on in the body. The body, of course, has this massive blood network that supplies goods, takes away waste products, does very important things for the body, but it's also a supply of the electrical circuit for the body. And each individual cell has a cytoskeleton. This gives it structure, gives it strength so it doesn't get smashed. But that cytoskeleton is also a source of electricity. The electricity coming in off of the network, traveling through the cytoskeletal fibers to provide electricity to the internal of the cell.
One photon that hits the retina can be amplified so massively within your body that it can initiate 100,000 chemical reactions in your body.
The photons are in the control factor of being able to trigger functions, moderate functions, all through the wavelength. Now, we cover this in depth in our CTW course on photonic. Life is photonic. Review that, please.
So here's a schematic of a simple cell. And this cell, you can see these plus signs throughout going along these cytoskeleton pathways. And those are protons. And they're coming in from the outside. But who's making those protons be available? That's the structured water. It surrounds the cell, and the cell works very hard to maintain that structured water. And when there's sunlight, it will grow, and that will make more energy. But the plus signs are gathering along the edge, along the interface of the structured water with the unstructured water outside of it, and they can be channeled up into these caveoli, these little caves, and then brought right into the cytoskeleton to provide those positive charges to certain organelles in the cell that need positive charge. And in particular, one of those is the lysosome. Lysosomes need to be extremely acidic in order to do their job, and their job is to clear molecular debris. Very, very important. Get rid of the garbage.
Why are light and electricity synonymous? Because whenever an electron is excited, there is an orbital jump, and in that jump, a photon is absorbed, so we're absorbing light.
Electrons never touch each other, they repel, so atoms never touch. What does touch is photons. And every time an electron changes to an outer orbital, a photon is absorbed, and as it goes back, it is released. Everything is photonic.
As they draw in these plus signs, these protons, they get lower and lower pH, and now they can do their job. If that electrical circuit is not supplying enough protons, they can't do their job. The debris gathers up, and you get things like Alzheimer's disease from amyloid beta plaque.
When that electricity is given for biochemical reaction, the photon jumps again, and we give off light. So at all times, there are light waves, and there's actually also sound waves. So you are a conglomerate of a neighborhood of diversified light whose harmony is you. That is a quote from Ramtha.
The body will give off infrared radiation, heat, but also a little touch of light. Yes, humans will glow in the dark. A little bit of visible light will come out. Very, very faint. You'll need a special camera to see it. Not visible with the human eye.
There's also the mitochondria. Those are their source of energy for the cell. They make the ATP, and they also depend on protons to supply a lower pH in their intracellular membrane compared to the pH in the interior world. They need that pH drop to drive the generation of the ATP that supplies energy for the cell. What I'm saying, and the most important thing in this talk, is that structured water that is maintained outside the cell. It's a special gel form of water. It's not liquid, it's not solid. And it also induces this charge separation that creates a battery. And what happens then is that the cell uses those protons to go into the cytoskeleton to supply the positive charge, and the electrons stay inside the structured water, and they provide energy for another very, very important purpose, probably other purposes as well.
Yes, so the photons will help to moderate and build this electrical supply, the electrical current supply, that all of our life processes will feed off, every cell. Every process, electricity,
is the synthesis of sulfate. And the reason why this is important is because the sulfate actually maintains the gel. Each cell decorates its exterior with lots of sulfates that are attached to these extracellular matrix sugars outside the cell. And those sulfates are really important for maintaining this structured water.
Sunlight can help lower blood pressure, but now a new study tells us why.
And it's shown that at least ultraviolet UVA causes the skin to produce nitric oxide. It relaxes blood vessels so that the blood flow is better. And that can result in a blood pressure lowering of 2 to 5 millimeters.
So here's a picture, very schematic, of red blood cells traveling through a capillary. They're very crowded in the capillary. It's a very tight squeeze. They decorate themselves with sulfate outside their cell, and they deliver that sulfate as they pass through the capillary. They shed it, and they're therefore shedding negative charge. And that negative charge is then building up along the capillary wall. And it's very interesting because as they do this, by the time they get to the vein and all of them are shedding their negative charge, this creates a battery between the artery and the vein, which then actually propels the red blood cell through the artery, through the capillary, because it's attracted to the venous side because of this battery. It's attracted to the cathode, and that will pull the red blood cell through so that the heart doesn't have to work so hard to pump. And furthermore, these layers, these sulfated layers along the wall of the capillary are very slick jello. The red blood cell can just slide through almost frictionless effort to get through that capillary. When these things break down, the red blood cell gets stuck and you have a no-flow situation. So
Those with high blood pressure may see even bigger results, giving more proof how important sunlight is to your cardiovascular health.
And what we know is that UV light is critical to producing vitamin D. Calcium is obviously very important for heart and muscle function. It's good for healthy bones.
when you think about a red blood cell negatively charged moving through a region, that's going to create an electromagnetic field. And the body can use that as a signal, and in fact the body does. Very, very important signal. The wall of the capillary end of the arteries releases nitric oxide. These little guys over here are nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is very important in the blood because it relaxes the muscles and allows the blood to flow.
But also vitamin D is very important in rebuilding DNA that gets damaged. And it's also important to stimulate sunlight, to stimulate the release of melatonin. And melatonin, like vitamin D, is an antioxidant.
Capillary cross-section of a red blood cell, we're getting a little bit more into detail here. We have a bunch of things that we're pointing to. You can see the negative charge surrounding the red blood cell. That's actually cholesterol sulfate. Cholesterol is an important part of what makes the sulfate work. And the red blood cell has these cholesterol molecules in its membrane with sulfate sticking out that gives it that negative charge. And it sheds those cholesterol sulfate molecules as it goes through. They hop over to the other side and go into the endothelial cells, providing them with both cholesterol and sulfate. You can see I have these little sulfate molecules showing around the interior. We've got a few endothelial cells wrapping it around. And then they have this complicated glycosaminoglycans in their extracellular matrix. That's all these little strings there. That's the sugar chains. Those things have sulfates attached to them, and that's what's maintaining that structured water.
Trying to at least have a period of time when you go out in the sun without sunglasses on to allow your body to recognize that it's in the sun. Probably putting on sunblock only if you're expecting longer exposures is a reasonable thing.
This is my provocative proposal. Cholesterol sulfate supplies oxygen, sulfur, cholesterol, energy, and negative charge to all the tissues. Very, very important list of things. Sulfate has 4 oxygen molecules, so this is another way that the red blood cell can actually deliver oxygen to the tissues. It has the oxygen bound to the hemoglobin, but it can actually deliver the oxygen in the form of sulfate.
The answers are changing on a daily basis as we get more information and realize how important sunshine is and how many things it helps us with, as opposed to how clear it is that it causes certain kinds of skin cancer.
Sulfate is synthesized in the skin and in the red blood cells and in the platelets using the energy of sunlight. So if you look at the veins in the back of your hand, hold those up to the sunlight, you'll be making lots of sulfate, and that'll be combined with cholesterol to make cholesterol sulfate, and then that will end up making your cells very, very happy. And we believe the molecule that does this is the same molecule that makes the nitric oxide, which is very, very interesting. That we have written in 2 papers now, this group, claiming that endothelial nitric oxide synthase, eNOS, a very, very interesting molecule, can oxidize both sulfur and nitrogen. And it chooses which one to oxidize based on the situation in the current environment. It's constantly monitoring the signals, for example, the electromagnetic signals, to decide which one to make on a case-by-case, moment-by-moment decision. So the skin then is a solar-powered battery, and we are able to use the sunlight for energy just as the plants are. But we do it in this very different way that's actually going to provide us with what animals have, which is mobility and a brain. We have a nervous system. Plants don't have that. They use the sunlight very differently. So this is my bold claim: deficiencies in cholesterol and sulfate supplies to the blood and to the tissues are the most important factor behind modern diseases. And I have looked at many, many modern diseases, and I can see that in many cases what's happening is the body is attacking a particular organ or an organ system in order to get at the sulfate that's there, in order to give that sulfate to the blood because the blood is deficient. If the blood doesn't flow, the body doesn't work. So eNOS, unfortunately, is very vulnerable, and this is why we face a problem right now. It has a lot of dependencies. It depends on vitamin B12, which is cobalamin. That means it depends on cobalt. It depends on iron because it has a heme group. It depends, of course, on sulfur. There's a zinc atom in there. Of course, oxygen, glutathione, the antioxidant glutathione, and of course, sunlight. And so because eNOS is vulnerable to many different environmental toxins as well, such as mercury, aluminum, and particularly glyphosate, which is the one I've studied the most, which is in the pervasive herbicide Roundup that's pervasive in our environment, in our food, in our water.
So once properly operated, our old friend, the nitric oxide here, is so powerful and helps so many different factors in life. Very incredible, and all based on a photonic idea.
Roundup, I think, is causing a serious problem for eNOS, which is causing us to have this massive sulfate deficiency. So eNOS, in fact, it's a member of this class of enzymes called cytochrome P450 enzymes, which both aluminum and glyphosate have been shown to suppress.
Monsanto knew that its weed killer could be deadly to people in 100 different ways. They knew this. They developed it anyways, because they make an awful lot of money on this, an awful lot of money. This Roundup chemical is now creating disease throughout the world as it interrupts on the photonic cycle.
So how to stay healthy? Eat a strictly certified organic diet. My husband and I have been doing this only for the last 3 or 4 years when we first found out about glyphosate. It has done wonders for our health. We totally believe in it. Get lots of dietary sulfur. That means great foods like broccoli, garlic, onions, seafood, liver, for example, if you can get a healthy liver.
Yes, sulfur is a key trace mineral needed for energy, needed for us to be able to electrically boost the circulation between the arteries and the venous system to the capillaries, all needing sulfur.
Get out in the sunlight as much as you can. I love to take walks on the beach, in the water. You're getting everything there. You're getting the grounding, you're getting the sunlight, and fresh air. So really, really useful to take a walk on the beach in the sunlight.
Yes, extremely useful that we need to be able to get this electromagnetic radiation. We need to be able to get the heat and the light, the visible light, in order for our biological processes to work correctly.
In summary, the human body uses sunlight to make sulfate, which maintains gelled water surrounding cells. That gelled water induces charge separation, and that supplies electricity to the tissues. Sulfate is essential to prevent a no-flow situation in the blood. That's why the red blood cells can scoot through so easily through the capillaries. Makes the heart sing because it doesn't have to work nearly so hard. eNOS is a magical protein that makes sulfate in response to sunlight, but it's highly vulnerable to both deficiencies in certain nutrients and poisoning from various toxic chemicals, especially Roundup.
This Roundup chemical has created so many different diseases. It is behind the problems of autism and a host of other different diseases. Deadly stuff should be prohibited.
So the skin then is a solar-powered battery, and we are able to use the sunlight for energy just as the plants are, but we do it in this very different way that's actually going to provide us with, what animals have, which is mobility and a brain. We have a nervous system. Plants don't have that. They use the sunlight very differently.
Plants will take in sunlight as their primary energy source. And then humans will utilize it completely different. Plants use a Calvin cycle, and the humans will use the Krebs cycle.
So the path to good health includes a sulfur-rich organic diet, lots of sunlight exposure, and frequent grounding.
If you follow our courses on the life is photonic and all the different processes, you start to recognize more of the photonic nature and the deficiencies of sunlight and heat and these other things and how they can create problems. We start to understand much more about biology.
When sunlight hits our skin, something remarkable happens. Just under the surface lies a type of cholesterol. When the sun's ultraviolet rays hit this molecule, it transforms, becoming a form of vitamin D.
Vitamin D is a very interesting molecule and concerned with so many different processes, healthy processes of the body. And it really does prove that the human body needs sunlight in order to be completely healthy.
This is the same molecule found in cod liver oil. It then travels to the liver, where it's converted into the form that doctors measure in our blood. This is then activated by the kidneys.
The sun hits your skin, there's certain chemical reactions that occur that generate vitamin D from cholesterol in your skin. So people are always against cholesterol, but you need cholesterol to actually make vitamin D. Okay, so there's a lot of benefits to cholesterol.
And now it's ready to help absorb calcium, building strong, healthy, rickets-free bones.
I think that's about enough sun for one day.
We are a biophotonic light field. If that light field is coherent, means harmonious, you are joyful, you are in the now, there's no diseases, there's complete harmony.
Check this out. When the sun hits your skin and the retina, okay, through your eye, you get a chemical conversion of increasing serotonin. And serotonin can greatly affect your mood.
Your DNA is a holographic optical and sound system that is giving your information in space and time and emitting it as light.
Number two, it affects melatonin, it actually reduces melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone that helps you sleep. So darkness stimulates melatonin, but light, sun, will decrease this.
Sunlight helps us to moderate the production and utilization of melatonin and the utilization of serotonin. It helps us to basically control. And what we're going to see is that the blue light blocks the melatonin production, and the red light will help to stimulate it. You have night and day effects.
The heat from the sun and the humidity that's generated from the sun and also the environment has the power to decrease viral loads even from COVID-19. And this is where you're going to see, as you go into the summer, you're going to find that a lot of people are going to do much, much better simply because the reproduction of that virus is affected by the temperature and the humidity of the environment.
The UV light coming from the sun is also needed at controlling infections. It has this ionizing effect and helps to destroy bacteria, fungus, virus, and other different factors. So it's very important that we learn about the photonic effects inside biology.
4, UV. This is a wavelength that you're getting from the sun that has antibacterial effects. And this has nothing to do with vitamin D. UV inhibits the growth of certain bacteria and other microbes.
Nature's balance of the different light and the health effects and the stabilizing effects, the purity effects, very interesting. But indeed, the light of the sun is the main factor of life.
Increase resistance to infection, so it helps your immune system. All right, number 6, the infrared wavelength of the sun is great for wound healing and decreasing pain. There's many different types of therapy using infrared. And
sunlight is needed for us to monitor our emotions. Seasonal affective disorder, SAD, results if we just don't get enough of the sunlight. Now it's called depressive disorder with a seasonal pattern.
So when our DNA is being read, one gene is being read in the context of your entire space and time, your holographic program. So your little toe knows that your brain, your ear, and your heart are functioning, and it knows it when it reads that one gene. So
there is a circadian rhythm of the day, prompted by light, that hits parts of the brain through the pineal gland, through the eyes, and triggers the cascade of the different hormones. Melatonin is made at night while we sleep in the dark.
that the genetic information of a biological organism can be captured as that holographic light and sound form, and it can actually be transferred from one species of a frog away 5 kilometers through a laser to another species of a frog, and you have transmitted that genetic information.
Quick fun fact. Melatonin has the opposite effect in animals, depending on if they sleep during the day or at night. Nocturnal animals' brains secrete melatonin at night, just like ours, but instead of making them sleepy, it gets them amped up to go knock over trash cans and other nighttime stuff.
So what that means is that we can manipulate genes through light and sound. So let's say someone is ill and we give them molecules that are increasing the electricity within their system. So that is mass to mass. You're going to take, things like vitamin C, which is a profound electron donor, and all of its beneficial effects are related to its capacities to solve electrons in a watery solution, create an electrical current.
So when winter comes around and the days get shorter, your brain can get mixed up, and your circadian rhythm and your mood can get out of whack. Another hormone at play in SAD is serotonin. Most of your serotonin is weirdly in your intestines, where it helps move digesting food along. But some is in your brain, where it keeps you feeling good.
We are able to potentially genetically engineer humans of a whole different caliber in a new science, and we can do it by utilizing optogenetic systems. Your cells respond to light. You don't need to clip a gene. You just give it a light signal, and all aspects of cellular mechanism can be controlled by that. So bioengineering of superhumans can be done with light.
So as we learn from the plants about light, we find out that there is an optogenetic science developing of using sound and light and different speeds to beat just chemistry and to get into the mood reactions and to understand what drives the hormones. And that recognizing that during the winter some people get depressed because they're missing some of that needed light. You see? So as we start to find out more and more about light and how to use light bars and different types of things in blue light and bringing these things into our home, we start to understand more and more about our biology. We will be using pink and red lights to turn off and relax at night, and blue lights in our houses to turn on the body, turn on.
You don't even have to look at it. Just hang out next to it, share stories with it, have breakfast with it. It'll make you feel better. Medicines are another option. SSRIs are a class of drugs that may keep more serotonin in your synapses. In randomized controlled trials, SSRIs do better than placebos at treating SAD.
Biology and a medicine using light, using sound, using energy, using the mind, using nature, and working this all together. So now as we see that there is definitely a need for light. There's a deficiency in certain people. We need light and heat. And we need to start to look at more and more of what we need as human beings. And starting to see the entire spectrum of light and all the majesties of biology.